The world has never been louder, not because there are more voices than before, but because silence has become something we are afraid of. Think about your own life for a moment. How many times today have you reached for your phone without thinking? How many moments of waiting did you instantly fill with scrolling? Waiting for the bus, standing in a queue, walking alone, even lying in bed before sleep. Somewhere, almost without realizing it, we began treating every quiet moment as a problem that needed to be solved. If there is silence, we play music. If there is stillness, we open an app. If there is loneliness, we search for distraction. We have become experts at escaping the very place where wisdom has always lived. Because for thousands of years across continents, languages, and civilizations that never even met each other, one remarkable idea kept appearing. The deepest truths cannot be found in noise. They reveal themselves only to those who are willing to become quiet. But why? Why would something as simple as silence hold so much power? And if it truly is so valuable, why do most of us avoid it? Tonight I invite you on a journey, not across mountains, not through ancient temples, not into forgotten civilizations, but into the one place most people spend their entire lives avoiding, their own mind. This is not a journey that requires wealth. It does not require special knowledge. It does not even require belief. It asks only one thing, that for the next few minutes you allow yourself to slow down. Because by the end of this journey, you may discover that what you've been searching for your entire life was never hidden from you. It was simply buried beneath the noise. Imagine standing beside a lake at sunrise. The wind is calm. The surface is perfectly still. The water reflects the sky so clearly that it becomes impossible to tell where the earth ends and heaven begins. Now imagine throwing hundreds of stones into that lake every minute. Ripples collide. The reflection disappears. The sky hasn't changed. The lake has. Your mind works in exactly the same way. Peace has never completely left you. Clarity has never vanished. They have simply become impossible to see because the surface is constantly disturbed. Every notification is another stone. Every worry is another ripple. Every comparison with someone else's life creates another wave. Eventually, the water becomes so restless that we forget it was ever capable of reflecting anything at all. This is the tragedy of modern life. We don't merely experience noise. We become identified with it. Many people believe that thinking constantly means they are alive. But have you ever noticed that the loudest voice inside your head is rarely the wisest one? It tells you that you are behind, that you are not enough, that everyone else is happier, that your worth depends on your success, that rest is laziness, that silence is wasted time. Yet if you observe carefully, you'll notice something strange. These thoughts never stop. One worry replaces another. One desire gives birth to the next. The mind promises that peace is always waiting just beyond the next achievement, the next promotion, the next relationship, the next purchase, the next milestone. But once you arrive there, the peace lasts only a moment. Then the race begins again. Ancient teachers noticed this long before smartphones, advertising, or social media existed. They understood that the human mind naturally clings to desire and fear. Technology didn't create this tendency, it amplified it. Imagine carrying a small fire inside your heart. Normally it flickers quietly, but every distraction throws another piece of wood onto the flames. Another headline, another opinion, another comparison, another argument. Eventually the fire becomes so large that we mistake its heat for our own identity. We begin saying things like, I am anxious, I am angry, I am afraid. But what if those emotions are not who you are? What if they are simply weather passing across the sky of your awareness? The sky is never harmed by the storm. It merely holds it. This simple shift changes everything, because once you stop believing every thought, you finally become capable of observing them. And observation is where freedom begins. Long before psychology became a science, Wise men and women quietly observed the human condition. They noticed that people who chased endless pleasure often became the most restless. Those who accumulated the most possessions still feared losing them. Those who constantly searched for recognition rarely felt recognized. It wasn't because pleasure, wealth, or success were evil. It was because they had mistaken temporary satisfaction for lasting peace. Imagine trying to fill a bucket with water while there is a hole in the bottom. No matter how much you pour in, the bucket never stays full. Most of us spend our lives pouring more into the bucket. More money, more attention, more entertainment, more accomplishments. Rarely do we stop to ask a different question. What if the real problem is the hole? Silence allows us to notice the hole, not to judge ourselves, not to shame ourselves, simply to see clearly. And seeing clearly is where transformation always begins. This is why so many ancient traditions encourage periods of retreat, not to escape society forever, but to remember who they were without constant influence. There is a profound difference between being alone and being lonely. Loneliness says, "No one is with me." Solitude whispers, "I have finally met myself." Modern culture often confuses these two experiences. We fear solitude because we have forgotten how to be good company for ourselves. So we surround ourselves with endless stimulation. Ironically, the more connected we become digitally, the more disconnected many people feel internally. There is an old story about a man searching for a precious jewel. He traveled across deserts, crossed oceans, climbed mountains, spent decades looking for what he believed would finally complete him. When he returned home as an old man, someone pointed toward the inside of his own coat. Hidden within the lining, the jewel had been there the entire time. The story survives because it speaks about us. We search everywhere except the one place we rarely examine, our own awareness. Silence does not create wisdom, it uncovers it. Just as polishing a mirror does not create the reflection, it simply removes the dust. This is why the first experience of silence often surprises people. They expect peace. Instead, they meet resistance. The moment external noise disappears, internal noise grows louder. Forgotten memories appear. Embarrassing moments replay. Old regrets return. Unfinished conversations echo in the mind. Many people conclude, "Silence isn't for me." But imagine cleaning an old room that has remained closed for years. The first thing that fills the air is dust. The dust was always there. Cleaning merely revealed it. The same is true of the mind. Silence exposes what distraction has been covering. This is not failure, it is progress. Healing always begins with honesty, and honesty requires stillness. There is a reason rivers become clear only after the mud settles. If you constantly stir the water, it remains cloudy forever. But if you leave it undisturbed, gravity quietly performs the work. Your mind possesses a similar intelligence. Much of what troubles us begins to reorganize itself when we stop interfering every second. Not because silence magically solves every problem, but because clarity changes how we meet them. We stop reacting, we begin responding. We stop running, we begin understanding. We stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and slowly begin asking, "What is this trying to teach me?" That single question has transformed countless lives, because every difficult experience contains two stories, the story of suffering and the story of awakening. Which one becomes your life depends largely on whether you are willing to become quiet enough to hear it. The hidden power of silence. Part 2. Why we fear being alone with our minds. If someone asked you to sit alone, in complete silence, for just 30 minutes, with no phone, no music, no book, and no one to talk to, how would you feel? For some, it sounds peaceful. For many others, it sounds unbearable. That reaction tells us something important. We are not simply surrounded by noise. We have become dependent on it. It fills the empty spaces between our thoughts. It keeps uncomfortable questions at a distance. And perhaps most importantly, it prevents us from meeting ourselves. But this wasn't always the way human beings lived. For most of history, silence was not unusual. It was woven into daily life. People walked without headphones. They worked without constant notifications. They watched the sunrise without feeling the need to capture it. The rhythm of life was slower. There was room to think, room to observe, room to simply exist. Today, silence has become almost invisible. The moment we wake, our attention is pulled in 100 directions. Messages, emails, headlines, short videos, opinions, advertisements. Each one asking for just a few seconds of our attention. But together, they shape the entire landscape of our mind. Attention is one of the most valuable things you possess. It determines what you notice, what you remember, what you become. Every day, countless companies compete for it, not because your attention is worthless, but because it is priceless. Where your attention goes, your life quietly follows. Imagine walking through a beautiful forest. Birds are singing. Sunlight filters gently through ancient trees. A cool breeze moves the leaves. Now imagine spending that entire walk staring at a glowing screen. The forest was always there, but you never truly experienced it. Life can be the same. We become so focused on what demands our attention that we overlook what deserves it. The laughter of a child, the kindness of a stranger, the sound of rain, the quiet comfort of breathing. These moments ask for nothing, and perhaps that is why they are so easily ignored. Yet they are often the moments that remind us we are alive. There is a story told in different forms across many cultures. A traveler searched for the greatest teacher in the world. He crossed deserts, climbed mountains, and visited magnificent temples. After years of searching, he found an old sage sitting beneath a tree. The traveler asked, "What is the secret to a peaceful life?" The old man smiled and said nothing. Minutes passed, then an hour. The traveler became frustrated. He believed his question had been ignored. Finally, he stood up to leave. As he turned away, the old man quietly said, "You have already received your answer. You simply could not remain still long enough to hear it." Whether the story is historical or symbolic does not matter. Its wisdom remains the same. Silence cannot be rushed. It unfolds only when we stop demanding immediate answers. Modern life has trained us to expect everything instantly. Food, entertainment, information, even relationships. We have become uncomfortable with waiting. Yet almost everything meaningful in nature grows slowly. A tree does not become ancient overnight. A river shapes stone over centuries. The stars reveal themselves only after darkness arrives. Nature never hurries, and still, it completes everything. Perhaps we have mistaken speed for progress. Perhaps moving faster has only made it harder to know where we are going. Have you ever reached the end of a busy week, only to realize you barely remember living it? Days blur together. Morning becomes evening. Weeks become months. Years quietly pass. Not because time moves faster, but because attention moves elsewhere. The more distracted we become, the less deeply we experience our own lives. Silence interrupts this pattern. It invites us back into the present moment. Not the imagined future, not the remembered past. Only this breath, this heartbeat, this moment. Many people fear the present because they assume nothing extraordinary is happening. But the present is where life has always been unfolding. The past exists as memory. The future exists as imagination. Only this moment is alive, and silence is the doorway into it. There is another reason we avoid silence. It removes our distractions, but it also removes our excuses. When everything becomes quiet, we begin noticing questions we have postponed for years. Am I living according to my values? What kind of person am I becoming? Why am I chasing goals that no longer fulfill me? Who would I be without the expectations of others? These are not comfortable questions, but they are honest ones. And honesty is often the beginning of freedom. Imagine carrying a backpack filled with stones. At first, the weight seems manageable. As the years pass, another stone is added. Unspoken grief, unforgiven mistakes, old disappointments, broken promises, unfinished dreams. Eventually, the backpack becomes so heavy that we forget what it feels like to walk without it. Instead of putting it down, we simply learn to carry it. Distraction is like decorating that backpack. We convince ourselves it is lighter because we no longer look directly at it. Silence asks something different. It gently says, take it off, open it, look inside. Not to punish yourself, not to relive every painful memory, but to discover that many of the stones no longer belong there. Some were placed there by fear, others by shame, many by the expectations of people who are no longer part of your life. The remarkable thing is this: no one else can remove them for you. Not a teacher, not a book, not a video, not even these words. They can point the way, but eventually you must sit quietly enough to recognize which burdens are truly yours and which were never yours to carry. This is why silence has always been considered courageous. It is not the absence of action. It is the willingness to see reality without running from it. There is great strength in facing yourself, not the version you present to the world, not the carefully edited version shown through photographs or achievements, but the ordinary, imperfect, deeply human person beneath it all. Because that person is worthy of compassion, perhaps for the first time in a long while. Silence teaches us something else that is easily forgotten. You are not every thought that appears in your mind. Imagine sitting beside a river. Leaves float past on the current. You notice each one, but you do not jump into the water to chase it. Thoughts are much the same. Some are beautiful, some are painful, some are completely meaningless, yet we often cling to each one as if it defines us. Silence helps us watch the river without being carried away by it, and in that quiet observation, something extraordinary begins to happen. The distance between you and your thoughts grows just enough for freedom to enter. You still experience fear, but fear no longer commands your life. You still experience sadness, but sadness no longer becomes your identity. You still experience uncertainty, but uncertainty no longer steals your peace. Nothing outside has changed, yet everything within has begun to shift. This is the quiet miracle of silence. It does not change the world around you. It changes the place from which you meet the world. And when that place becomes calm, even life's greatest storms lose some of their power. Because a storm can shake the branches of a tree, but it cannot uproot one whose roots grow deep. In the next part, we will journey into the wisdom of some of history's greatest spiritual teachers and discover why traditions separated by thousands of miles all arrived at the same profound truth. When the mind becomes quiet, the heart begins to remember what it has always known. The hidden power of silence. Part 3. What the wise discovered in silence. There is something extraordinary about humanity. Across thousands of years, people lived on different continents. They spoke different languages. They built different civilizations. Many never knew the others existed. Yet when they searched for wisdom, they often arrived at remarkably similar conclusions. Not through debate, not through conquest, but through silence. Imagine climbing 4 different mountains. Each path is unique. The landscape changes, the weather changes, the language of the travelers changes. Yet when they reach the summit, they all gaze upon the same horizon. Perhaps truth is something like that. Different paths, one sky. Throughout history, countless seekers stepped away from the noise of society. Some entered forests, some crossed deserts, some lived beside rivers, some disappeared into mountain caves. From the outside, it may have seemed they were escaping the world, but many believed they were finally beginning to understand it. One lesson appears again and again. The loudest voice inside your mind is not always your deepest self. Think about that for a moment. How many thoughts pass through your mind today? Hundreds? Thousands? Most appeared without invitation. One moment you were planning tomorrow, the next, remembering a conversation from years ago, then worrying about something that hasn't even happened. The mind is constantly producing stories. Some are useful, many are not. If every passing thought represented who you truly are, your identity would change every few seconds. And yet, beneath all those changing thoughts, there is something that quietly observes them, a still awareness, a silent witness. You may not notice it during a busy day, but in moments of deep stillness, it becomes impossible to ignore. Imagine sitting in a theater. The movie begins. You laugh, you cry, you become completely absorbed by the story. For 2 hours, you forget that you are sitting in a chair. Then the lights come on. Suddenly, you remember. The screen displayed countless scenes, but the screen itself never became the story. Your awareness is like that screen. Thoughts, emotions, memories, they all appear upon it, but awareness itself remains calm, open, present. Perhaps this is why silence feels so unfamiliar at first. Without constant distraction, we begin noticing the difference between the movie and the one watching it. Many people spend their entire lives trying to control every thought. But what if freedom does not come from controlling the mind, rather from understanding it? Imagine standing beside the ocean. Waves continue rising and falling. You do not command them to stop. You simply recognize that they belong to the sea. Thoughts behave much the same way. The more desperately we fight them, the stronger they often become. Silence teaches another way. Observe, allow, release. Not because thoughts are your enemy, but because they are visitors. No visitor stays forever. One of the greatest illusions we carry is the belief that we must always become someone else before we deserve peace. I'll be happy when, I'll finally rest after, I'll feel complete once. The sentence is never finished, because the destination keeps moving. Like chasing the horizon, the closer we get, the farther it appears. Silence quietly asks a question few people dare to answer. If nothing about your life changed tomorrow, could you still discover peace today? At first, the question feels impossible. Then something unexpected happens. We begin realizing that peace is not always the result of perfect circumstances. Often, it is the result of a different relationship with those circumstances. Imagine holding a glass of water. For a few seconds, it feels light. Hold it for an hour, your arm begins to ache. Hold it all day, the pain becomes unbearable. The weight never changed, only the way you carried it. Many of our struggles are like that glass. We grip them so tightly that they become heavier than they truly are. Silence does not remove every burden, but it reminds us we can loosen our grip. Nature has always understood this. Watch a tree during autumn. It does not argue with the falling leaves. It does not desperately cling to every branch. It lets go. Not because letting go is easy, but because making room for new life is part of its nature. Human beings often resist this rhythm. We cling to old identities, old disappointments, old victories, old fears, sometimes even old versions of ourselves that no longer exist. We tell ourselves that letting go means losing something. Yet perhaps letting go simply creates space. Space for clarity, space for compassion, space for a quieter kind of joy. One evening, imagine standing beneath a sky filled with stars. Millions of lights scattered across infinite darkness. During the day, those stars never disappear. The sunlight simply hides them. Wisdom can be like that. It has not vanished from your life. It has only been hidden beneath constant mental daylight. Silence is the coming of night. Not a darkness to fear, but a darkness gentle enough to reveal what was always there. This may be why some of the greatest moments in life arrive unexpectedly. Watching the ocean, holding a newborn child, walking alone beneath falling snow, listening to rain against a window, looking into someone's eyes without speaking. In those moments, we stop trying to control life, and for a brief instant, life feels complete exactly as it is. Notice something interesting. None of those experiences depend on buying anything, winning anything, or proving anything. They arise through presence. The quieter we become, the more ordinary moments reveal extraordinary beauty. A cup of tea becomes a ritual. A sunrise becomes a miracle. Breathing becomes enough. This is not because the world suddenly changed. It is because our attention finally returned. Perhaps that has always been the true purpose of silence. Not to escape reality, but to experience it more deeply. There is a quiet strength that grows within people who regularly make space for stillness. They begin speaking less, but listening more. Judging less, but understanding more. Reacting less, but responding with greater wisdom. Others notice it, not because these people demand attention, but because calm has its own presence. Have you ever entered a room where someone seemed completely at peace? They did not need to announce it. Their stillness spoke for them. Peace has a language beyond words, and silence is where that language is learned. Perhaps this is why genuine wisdom often sounds simple, not because it lacks depth, but because truth rarely needs unnecessary decoration. A calm mind sees clearly. A grateful heart loves freely. A quiet soul fears less. Simple words, a lifetime of practice. As our journey begins to draw toward its conclusion, one question remains. How do we bring this ancient wisdom into a modern world filled with endless noise? How can silence become more than a beautiful idea? How can it become a way of living? That is where our journey leads next. Because silence is not meant to remain inside monasteries, hidden in mountaintops, or reserved for philosophers. It belongs wherever a human heart is willing to become still. The hidden power of silence. Part 4. Returning to stillness. If you have stayed with me until this moment, perhaps something inside you has already begun to slow down. Maybe your breathing feels a little deeper. Maybe your thoughts are not racing quite as fast. Or perhaps, for the first time today, you've simply allowed yourself to be here. If that is true, then you have already experienced something important. Silence is not a destination. It is a return to the part of yourself that has never been lost. For much of our lives, we believe we are moving forward by adding more. More knowledge, more possessions, more achievements, more experiences. But nature often teaches the opposite. The sculptor does not create a masterpiece by adding stone. He creates it by removing everything that does not belong. The gardener helps a tree grow by pruning dead branches. The river becomes clear not because something is added to it, but because the mud is allowed to settle. Perhaps the soul grows in much the same way, not through endless accumulation, but through gentle release. Release the need to be everywhere at once. Release the need to win every argument. Release the need to prove your worth. Release the belief that your value depends on what you accomplish. You were never born needing to earn your existence. A newborn child has achieved nothing, owns nothing, knows nothing, yet no one questions its worth. Somewhere along the way, many of us forgot that truth. We began measuring ourselves through comparison. We compared our careers, our appearance, our homes, our relationships, even our happiness. Comparison has existed throughout history, but never before has it entered our lives every few minutes. Today, we carry the world's opinions in our pockets. We see carefully edited moments and quietly compare them to the unedited reality of our own lives. It is an impossible standard because we compare our private struggles to someone else's public highlights. Silence gently interrupts this cycle. It reminds us that life is not a competition, it is an experience. A flower never competes with the flower beside it. The moon never envies the sun. The ocean never wishes it were the mountains. Everything in nature fulfills its purpose, simply by becoming fully itself. Perhaps we were meant to do the same. So how do we begin? Not with dramatic changes, not by disappearing into a monastery, not by abandoning the responsibilities of ordinary life. Transformation rarely begins with extraordinary actions. It begins with ordinary moments, experienced differently. Tomorrow morning, before reaching for your phone, sit quietly for 5 minutes. Do nothing. Notice your breathing. Listen to the sounds around you. Observe the thoughts that appear. Do not fight them. Do not follow them. Simply notice them as clouds passing through an open sky. At first, your mind may resist. It may tell you this is pointless, that you should be productive, that 5 minutes cannot possibly matter. Smile gently and continue sitting, because every meaningful skill in life begins with awkwardness. No one learns an instrument in a day. No tree reaches the sky in a week. The mind also requires patience. As the days become weeks, something subtle begins to happen. You notice your reactions before they become words. You pause before responding in anger. You become less controlled by urgency. The space between stimulus and response quietly grows wider. Within that space, wisdom has room to speak. Imagine dropping a single seed into fertile soil. For many days, nothing appears to happen. If you judged only by what you could see, you might believe the seed had failed. Yet beneath the surface, roots are forming. Life is unfolding in silence. Your own transformation often happens the same way. The greatest changes are usually invisible before they become visible. Do not underestimate small moments of stillness. 5 quiet minutes each day become hours. Hours become habits. Habits become character. Character quietly becomes destiny. One day, without realizing exactly when it happened, you notice that the things which once disturbed you no longer possess the same power. You still encounter difficulties. You still experience disappointment. You still lose people you love. You still make mistakes. Silence does not remove pain from life. No philosophy can promise that. But it changes your relationship with pain. Instead of drowning in every wave, you learn to float. Instead of resisting every season, you begin trusting that spring always follows winter. This is not blind optimism. It is quiet resilience. Life has always moved in cycles. Day becomes night, winter becomes spring. The tide rises, then falls. Your own heart follows similar rhythms. There will be seasons of clarity and seasons of confusion, moments of confidence and moments of doubt. The goal is not to remain permanently peaceful. The goal is to remember that no season lasts forever. Even your darkest night contains the promise of morning. There is another practice worth remembering. Spend time with nature, not to exercise, not to take photographs, not to accomplish anything, simply to observe. Watch the wind move through the trees. Notice how a bird lands without anxiety. Listen to water flowing around stones instead of fighting them. Nature has no interest in pretending. Everything is exactly what it is. There is a profound honesty in that, and honesty is contagious. The more time we spend with what is real, the easier it becomes to recognize what is false. Perhaps that is why so many people return from forests, mountains, or oceans feeling lighter. Nature reminds us of a rhythm we have forgotten: slow, patient, present, alive. There is a beautiful paradox at the heart of silence. The quieter you become, the more deeply you hear, not only the sounds around you, but the quiet wisdom within you. You begin recognizing the difference between fear and intuition, between impulse and understanding, between noise and truth. That voice has always been there. It was simply speaking more softly than the world around it. Imagine your life as a vast night sky. For years, clouds have hidden the stars. You may even begin believing the stars have disappeared. But the clouds were never permanent. Little by little, through moments of stillness, if you've watched until the end, thank you for sharing this moment of silence with me. I hope this video brought you a little more peace, clarity, and presence. If it did, please like this video, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe for more timeless wisdom. In our next journey, we'll explore one of nature's greatest mysteries, the sacred geometry of nature. You won't want to miss it. Until then, stay present, stay curious, and remember, sometimes the deepest answers are found in silence.